16th, 2015 Planning Commission to order. Could you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Marsters?
Here.
Commissioner Harper Pedersen?
Present.
Commissioner David Silberman is absent this evening. Vice Chair Bergman? Present. Chair Gutierrez?
Present. Public comment. Public comment is limited to items not on the agenda. The Commission may briefly respond to statements made or questions posed as allowed by the Brown Act. However, the Commission's general policy is to refer items to staff for attention or have a matter placed on a future Commission agenda for a more comprehensive action or report. Is there anybody here to speak on an item that's not on the agenda? Okay, with that, I'll move along. Approval of minutes. Can I get a motion to, has anybody seen any changes to those minutes?
I don't have any changes.
I move approval of the minutes.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, just as a reminder, we're going to do a roll call vote.
Oh,
I know,
okay, that's
I know
right.
this is new, so
This is new.
yes. Okay, Commissioner Marsters?
Yes.
Commissioner Harper Pedersen?
Yes.
Vice Chair Bergman?
Yes.
And Chair Gutierrez?
I'm going to recuse myself because I wasn't at that meeting. It was a meeting I recused myself anyway, so. Great. Moving along. Public hearing. This is a long one, and I've had a lot of coffee tonight, so. Procedure for public hearing. Staff will present a report on the history, physical features, etc. on the application, followed with the staff's recommendation. The applicant will make a presentation. Thereafter, interested members of the community may speak on the proposal. When all interested parties had an opportunity to be heard, the hearing will be closed and no further discussion from the floor can be held. The commission will then consider the evidence and make its recommendation. If you challenge a public hearing item in court, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else raised at the public hearing described in this notice, the public notice, or in a written correspondence delivered to the city at or prior to the public hearing. Speakers should fill out a speaker form found by the door and hand it to the recording secretary prior to addressing the commission. The speaker should come up to the microphone to speak since the meeting is being recorded. This will assist staff in preparing the minutes. First item A, St. Carlos Transit Village, and I believe that's going to be continued.
Yes, through the chair and for the members of the public. This was a previously noticed item for a request for approval of a grading and dirt haul certificate and approval of a sign program for the residential portion of the Transit Village project. However, the notice had incorrect figures for the grading and dirt haul quantities, and so we will be renoticing that to a date certain, which will be December the 7th.
Okay, thank you. Paul, I know you wanted to speak on that. You want December 7th?
The chair, excuse me, through the chair, you could open the public hearing, and we can continue that on December 7th.
Paul,
So if you
did you
wanted
want
to
to-
take public comment, we can.
Why, might as well.
Just so you'll be prepared. They're able to excavate, they need a closure report to haul. So just like with Pam, they can dig up all the dirt, they need to characterize it so they know where they can safely take it, and then they can haul it away.
Okay. Is there a specific document that you're referring to, too, that we can reference?
Well, I have here a letter to Samtrans from the water boards giving them permission to excavate. It doesn't give them permission to haul. I could put that in the record.
Perfect. That'd be great.
And please make them cover it up and don't let them take it down Holly Street.
Okay. Thanks, Paul. And we'll leave that open for December 7th. So moving along, item B, 1985 Carmelita Drive, APN 050-104-010, consideration of a tentative parcel map approval for a lot split. And presentation from Jill?
Yes.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Jill Lewis, and tonight I'm presenting a request for a lot split at 1985 Carmelita. No. All right. Oh. Thanks. The subject site sits on the south side of Carmelita Drive at the southeast corner of the intersection with Alameda de las Pulgas. It is a flat 19,226 square foot lot currently developed with a single-family residence. Properties in the vicinity are also single-family detached residences. The applicant proposes the subdivision of one corner lot into two, one of which will become an interior lot, or a lot bounded on one side by a street and on all other sides by lot lines between adjacent lots, and one will stay a corner lot, or a lot bounded on two or more sides by street lines. The two new parcels will measure 9,750 square feet and 9,476 square feet, respectively. The proposed lot widths are 65 feet and 64.64 square feet. The project has been determined to be categorically exempt from the requirements of the California Environmental Quality Act, specifically Section 15315. This section exempts this subdivision from further environmental review as it is consistent with the general plan and zoning. No variances or exceptions are required. All services and access to the proposed parcels to city standards are available. The parcel was not involved in a division of a larger parcel within the last 2 years. The parcel is flat, and the resulting subdivision would only create one new net parcel. Staff has determined that all 10 findings can be made and recommends that you approve this request. I'm available for any questions, and the applicant is also here if you have any for him.
Does anybody have questions for staff right now?
I was just curious if there was any public or any comments received from the public.
None received.
Okay.
Is there anybody here to speak on item B? Okay. Yeah, absolutely. If you'd like to speak, you don't have to speak.
Well, I guess there's really
Questions? Okay.
My question is, we're just dividing the lot tonight. I was looking at this. Are these plans for two new houses? And we're not touching that. We're just dividing the lot.
That's correct.
Okay.
Any other questions? Seems pretty straightforward to me, so. Can I get a motion to close public hearing on that item?
I move that the Planning Commission approve the request for the tentative parcel. Oh, I'm sorry. You wanted me to close public comment, didn't you? You know what? I like jumping the gun, all right? I got stuff to do, Jesse. I move that we close public comment.
I'll second it. Oh, wait, she wanted to talk?
Well, I actually asked if anybody was speaking on that item, so that's where that exchange happened. But if you want to get up and talk about it, absolutely.
I withdraw my.
Okay.
Please.
Yeah. Okay, it's okay. You can come up here and state your name and your question, and we'll get it answered.
I'm Vicki Sorensen. Well, first of all, I did email somebody about this, and I had a comment on there, but I don't know why anyone.
It didn't make it into the public record? Okay.
Do you remember who you emailed that to?
Whoever was
On the notice?
The notice?
to be, if you wanted to be included in the construction.
Okay. We didn't get a copy, but you can tell us what you said on that, and we'll make a public comment.
Well, I can't remember.
Okay.
Exactly. Well, I know you're talking about just splitting it today, but part of it is the plans too. So you've split it just wondering how one parcel is on a corner and you're using a lot of that corner space as part of your square footage, but it's not really usable space. How is that able to be equated into one of the parcels? There's a giant corner where it has right-of-way and public space. And then also, you're talking about taking down the right-of-way fence, the fence that's in the right-of-way now, but that still is part of the square footage of what they're figuring.
Those are excellent questions, and I know that initially when I looked at the plans, that part of me already went there. But we would be hearing, or RDRC at least would be seeing this again, right, Jill?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, they'll see the design of the 2 new houses.
And we would be able to answer that through the RDRC process?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically today is just the lot split, and then there'll be another hearing on a smaller level for any kind of the design element of it. In forms of the lot split, if I remember correctly, 6,000 square feet is required on a corner lot. This is about almost 10. The corner lots, because they're corners, they have to take all the lot into consideration. And the other element is 5,000 usually on a split, and it's another additional 4,000 square feet. So this is kind of well within the criteria for a lot split, right? Am I?
No, I think, staff would be able
yeah.
That's correct.
Okay.
I mean, you're correct. Chair Gutierrez, the minimum lot size requirement for a corner lot where a portion of the lot has 2 street frontages, that's how a corner lot is defined, is required to be at least 6,000 square feet, whereas an interior lot is required to be at least 5,000 square feet. So the size of the lot allows them to well exceed those minimum standards.
And so by that, you're saying that if it was just an interior lot and it had, you're going to use all that space to determine where they can be putting the house, even though it's for a lot split, you're saying that whole section is usable, or?
Well, there's set, go ahead, Jesse, there's setbacks.
So basically what'll probably happen if this goes through as a lot split, they have to now meet the requirements for an individual building construction at that point. So all setback requirements now required for a house would have to be followed. And that's current, not previous, because some houses, we had 3 feet side setbacks. Now it's 5, and then second story is tiered even further. So they would have to they'd have to do the current design standards.
And design standards versus what most likely this house was initially built under.
This will come back again and they'll have to notice as well. They'll have to notice the design to all the neighbors. The neighbors have at that point the right to come and talk to the design review committee, and also
the applicant themselves.
And the applicant itself.
Earlier
Usually, most of the times, the applicant will reach out to all the neighbors, have a meeting prior to the design review committee meeting to kind of address some of the concerns. But this is kind of step 1 of multiple steps.
Just concerned about the space.
Completely
I
understand.
went there too.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Absolutely. David.
Said here that you don't have any objections from the public. Well, I sent a letter about my concerns. Did you not get it? I addressed it to the Planning Commission, and I handed it to the Building Department.
When was that? Do you remember?
Oh, gosh. 2 months ago.
And I just checked with Jill. Is there a formal application filed?
Correct, yep.
There is a formal application filed for the homes. It's currently being reviewed. It's in the very initial stages. So it's our understanding that your letter most likely went in with the design of the homes within that project file. So we have 2 projects two actual different permits associated with the activity going on. The first one is to divide the lots, and the second one is to develop on the lots. So your letter and your comments have been combined with the design of the lots, with the application for that, which will be heard in a public setting at a future date.
Well, I had no objections to the design. I had objections to the project.
To the lot split?
The lot split.
Yes.
Okay.
We can hear those objections
Yeah,
right
let's
now
hear
if you'd like.
I wish I brought a copy of my letter, but I didn't. I just assumed that it
Yeah,
was
no.
delivered to you.
I didn't know there were still outstanding permits.
I mean, right. I'm sorry, can I get your name for the record?
My name is Ravella.
Can you speak into the microphone?
Again? You want me?
No, just in the future.
So how do we want to handle this?
Well, we can certainly hear
if
comments
you-
and
yeah, if
concerns.
you-
I mean, it's public comment, and
Do you remember any of the items you brought up on the letter?
Well, I objected it because of the traffic on the Alameda and how the cars come east on San Carlos Avenue, and not to get to the stop sign, they turn right and then left on Carmelita. And I also objected. I didn't want the, let's see, Carmelita is a beautiful street. It's kind of unique. And we don't have much parking out on the street. And if you cross the Alameda and go west, that part of Carmelita, the 2000 block, is very congested. Very. And I just didn't want our street to be that same way. I'm here now to object about it, but I don't know what my kids will do after I'm gone, but, that's my objection. And I don't know if you're aware that a man was crossing Carmelita, crossing the Alameda from Carmelita, and he got hit by a car and he died 2 weeks after. This was about 2 years ago. So, and then sometimes the cars go north on the Alameda, turn right onto San Carlos Avenue to avoid the stop sign. So maybe you're not aware that there is a lot of traffic there. I've been there for 53 years, so I can't remember everything else, but I'd be glad to send you a copy of my letter. I'm sure I have one, but I just thought it was strange that you said you didn't hear anything from the public.
So how, just so you know, just so you're aware, I actually live on Alameda, also close to Britain, and drive that corridor very regularly, and would echo your concerns about traffic on Alameda in general, and taking that into consideration during any development.
Carmelita and the Alameda, yes.
Right.
They did, after that, they did put a light
Right. I was going to say they.
at Alma, but Alma doesn't go through. So a lot of people don't cross on Alma. They cross on Carmelita to the other side of Carmelita. So anyway, I just wanted you to be clear about that.
Thank you very much. So I'm assuming Public Works has looked at any traffic.
Exactly my question.
Yes, and their
implications.
consultant.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
So they've looked at it at the phase of the lot split, or will they continue to look at it in the building development phase?
Both.
Both, okay.
Both of these lots, though, will exit onto Carmelita and not onto
Correct.
Alameda.
Right.
Parking. Okay, so I'm just trying to. What else? Parking. Ideally, parking would be on site, so we probably.
That seems like something maybe to take special heed of when looking at the design.
Design, absolutely.
Making sure that there's adequate parking on site so that they're not adding additional parking to the street frontage of Carmelita.
Isn't that already in the zoning? The parking has to be on site?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But as you're looking at the design or design review, David, you're probably dealing with this from a design review
thanks.
perspective. Yeah, no problem.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure people would love to hear from you.
Well, first of all, thank you for allowing me to talk about the situation. When this was first proposed, I did have a meeting with the entire neighborhood and sent out notices that I would be open to discuss, and actually went around to all the homes and left my information in case someone wanted to reach out to me directly as well. Working with the planning department for the homes simultaneously with the lot split, this has been a long part of the discussion to make sure that we alleviate, some of the concerns, from the neighbors as far as any additional traffic, any hazards, and a lot of those have been addressed. I'm sorry if no one has been hearing me. A lot of those have actually been addressed in the staff report as well. But the size of the lots are obviously larger than what is is zoned for. The way the configuration of the existing lot, there is a lot of frontage there, which could be utilized, potentially as additional parking, in addition to basically the 2-car driveways that will be there for both existing homes. So I think parking should not be, significantly impacted more than it is at this present time, since there's there's only one driveway, and there are people who are staying in the house that park along the roadside, instead of parking in the driveway anyway. And then also to address the homes that are being built, which are obviously still in planning, that's being discussed to make sure that it's addressing the concerns of the immediate adjacent homes for sure, particularly if it's a 2-story and, site views into lots and things like that. That was part of the reason why we wanted to keep the homes close to the front of Carmelita, so that we're maintaining the larger size of those lots and not violating anyone's privacy in the areas. So, excuse me. And then, as far as people crossing the Carmelita, I mean, they do have the traffic light, at the immediate end of the street, which is not too far away from where Carmelita tees with Carmelita, or Alameda and Carmelita. So it's kind of any street. If people decide to jaywalk in between the designed places to walk across, there is going to be risk in any street. It could be on San Carlos Avenue, it could be Holly, it could be anywhere. So, but anyway, if there's any other questions that I can help with.
Anyone else up here?
You may want to see somebody look like they want to speak.
Come back up if you like.
Vicki Sorensen again. Okay, so as Tony was speaking, then I remembered some of my points, and especially when you were bringing it up, I was trying to frantically write them down, but that's what I was concerned with, the right-of-way of that corner into Alameda and to Carmelita, and that's what Tony was talking about, the cars parking or the cars pulling around, and then the gentleman, the contractor, whoever, was saying that there could be plenty of parking for that existing corner, but that's what we're talking about. That corner is a hard corner, a dangerous corner, and right now the existing or the past owner had the driveway at the end of their property where it gave it ample time to back out of your driveway and people coming around the corner to stop. Now you're going to split that and put 2 cars, and that second driveway or that first house driveway is going to be right on that corner where you're pulling out of your driveway or into the oncoming traffic. So that's something to be looked at. And then also, the house is close to the front, and I know that's probably a design issue, but that's what we were worried about too. Every house on our block is set back, has an ample amount of space in the front of the house, and then all of a sudden you come to the end where you've got traffic coming, you want to be able to see around the corner, you got two giant two-story houses right up front and close to the front of the yard, and they look like townhomes to me, but that's the design issue. That's all that's going on with that traffic, the right-of-way, and the two houses that are going to be blocking. Let's see, what else? And, parking, obviously. So now we have no sidewalks on San Carlos, although I know that house, they put their own sidewalk just because it was so dangerous. So now you have cars parking and still people trying to get around. So that was our main concern, my main concern. And let's see. Oh, and then also, just to be on the record, I know that my neighbor came over after he went down to the Planning Commission and talked to them about this issue, the same thing, the subdividing of the lots. I don't know why that's not on the record. They had a long discussion, and then
Did he go to the planning department?
He
or the building?
I thought he said he went to the planning department, and he said I don't know if he filed a complaint or not, but he
What's
then.
your neighbor's name?
It's Kaiser on the corner of Carmelita, but that's the last name. And then he came and discussed with us what his findings, and we had already had seen the pamphlet. But also, I wanted to say, all the neighbors didn't get the pamphlet. I know you only have to give them to the two existing corner. So none of us on the other end of the block got any information, and it was from our corner neighbors up at the Ender corner helping us to know what was going on. So
It should be a radius.
well, on our block, since we have large parcels, which not anymore, but large parcels, you'd have a
We've had that discussion quite a bit
radius,
about
but now,
the
yeah.
radius of certain areas.
Right, but it should be, for something this large and on a short block with the expansive properties that we have or afforded, it should be down the whole block, because even though I'm down at the end of the block, I'm still going to be impacted by this corner. So, just for future.
Yeah, it looks like the noticing primarily, there's quite a bit of noticing on the west side, which...
This would have been what the noticing radius would have looked like. I hear you, and it is a conversation. The noticing radius conversation is one we've had on the Planning Commission, including when we were looking at updating zoning relatively recently, because of course things do extend beyond, or impacts extend beyond noticing radiuses often, and so so please know that that is heard. And as far as where Mr. or Mrs. Kaiser's conversation was, I don't know if you guys know if that was within planning or building or how that.
Yeah, and just
or
to clarify,
education for
when there's the question is, did we receive any formal comments on those? Those are usually written comments, and I think what probably happened here, and this is what I'm hearing, is because we have an application for a lot split and an application for design review of the two homes. A lot of the comments related to perhaps the placement, the size of the homes, where those curb cuts and driveways are going to be. Those letters with those comments were put in the design review project file and not so much as a lot split. And when the project, again, the design of the homes are in their initial review, and staff is currently working on those, and those plans have been routed to our engineering division, and they're evaluating the current proposal. The proposal for the design of the homes is going to have to look at where those curb cuts are located and make sure that driveway visibility requirements are adhered to. And those projects, before they come to the RDRC, will be noticed. If anyone here is interested in making sure you get a notice for those projects, you can, leave us your name and number. I'll put a sheet and a pen, paper and pen out, and you can leave us your name and address number, and we'll be sure to add you to that list.
At the RDRC, a lot of negotiation or a lot of back and forth goes on in order to come up with the final look of the plan. So you have you have a chance before the RDRC meeting, and you also have a chance at the RDRC meeting to speak, and that's part of what we do when we do our when we serve on the RDRC, is to just sort of facilitate that discussion so people are more comfortable with things going on in their neighborhood.
Okay.
And oftentimes, I think, for example, it does seem, according to the comments, that the developer probably was thinking of pushing the homes closer to the front to preserve some back privacy for everybody. But if that's not necessarily what everybody wants, that's something to definitely, you don't have to wait for RDRC to have that conversation.
Yeah, a lot of these conversations can be had ahead of time. So when he formally requests a design review, a lot of the major issues are taken care of.
That makes more sense.
Yeah. And I mean, I can tell you, I think we've all served on RDRC, so I mean, views are probably the number one thing. Privacy, one window's looking into another window type thing. So I think he was trying to get ahead of some of that. However, if it impacts kind of the overall feel of the neighborhood, that's another item that we look at RDRC. So.
Okay.
As the guy who's actually on the RDRC right now, I would observe, please do not wait till you get to the RDRC. If you have concerns about the location of the driveway, let the developer know now. If you have concerns about where the property, where the houses are located on the property, let the developer know now. I mean, if there are other major structural things that you or your community have concerns about, let the developer know now. It's much easier to deal with windows and foliage at the RDRC than it is dealing with, basically moving the house. Or moving the driveway. I'm not saying that it can't happen, but
and that's what was in my email that I sent a month or two ago. So that was already.
Look at it this way: by the time it reaches that point, they've looked at every requirement from the city, and they've probably meeting that requirement. So what the committee's role is at that point is to make sure that everything's been discussed, but from a zoning perspective, it's probably met all requirements. And so the more information, the more ahead of time is going to only help the situation. And by the time it gets to RDRC, hopefully it's just planting some trees and everybody's on board with that.
Right. So as far as the lot split, there's nothing we can do. If it's within the split, there's nothing we can do. We can just voice our opinion that we'd like to see it kept one large lot rather than two.
There's a finding that we have to make, and some of the comments today touch on that finding, and that's that the site size and shape of the proposed lots are in general conformance to city requirements. That's done. And the general pattern of the neighborhood, and will not cause traffic, health, or safety hazards. So if you convinced us that it wasn't consistent with the general pattern of the neighborhood, we could refuse it. But looking at the various lots, there are some that are this size. In fact, there are quite a few.
Well,
so then the other,
I'll
let you finish. But the other is, if you look at, I mean, I don't know if you have the packet,
Directly
but
across the street
there are there are at least a dozen houses, a dozen lots that are of this size. Now, not necessarily right next to it on Carmelita or right across the street, but if you look at the neighborhood, there are numerous lots that are this size. In fact, most of them are this size rather than the large size. So it really comes down to the hazard issue. I'm hearing that, but it seems it's kind of abstract for me. I mean, someone would need to give me a better sense of hazard before I could say, gosh, they can't do what the zoning allows them to do, as much as the fact that I don't particularly care for lot splits.
Right.
But if the findings are there, the findings are there.
Right.
Has Public Works looked at the actual safety? I mean, that's part of the process, right? I mean, Public Works usually has to look at that and verify that the additional traffic won't cause safety concerns, correct?
Yes.
That's part of the process. That's my understanding. Okay.
Right. So when you're talking about your block, your neighborhood, isn't it just usually your block? I mean, most of you, when you have a block party, you have it on your block. You don't include 5 blocks down and then assess like everybody's property. Our block is our block. We've got Alameda to Cordilleras. And
Your neighborhood
and-
is bigger than your block.
Well, I know, but this is our.
The zoning definition is pretty normal the whole way around.
Oh, I realize that. I
And
realize
so
that.
it's tough. You know, I agree, and Dave touched to it. We've had a couple lot split situations, and we've been split on some of those. No pun intended. Split on this lot splits because of safety issues. Actually, this is not the first time we're hearing this. It does concern me when I didn't know about the person crossing the street, but I grew up in the area. It's always been one of those areas that little turn off of Alameda or off of San Carlos Avenue to Alameda. You know, really, it's a public works thing. They should maybe do a crosswalk. Well, there's a lighty crosswalk there, isn't there?
Well,
now?
if you're talking San Carlos and Alameda, yes.
Alameda and Carmelita. That
Right
little,
now, well, no.
Is it further down where they have that?
Alma, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, it's on
It's
Alma.
Alma. Okay. Yeah, I mean, there might be. I mean, Public Works should look at that location, but from a Public Works standpoint, is what that's going to fall on.
Right, right.
Not really, because the lot split itself doesn't necessarily create more traffic. Because it's the route that the people take. You know.
Yeah, I'm not talking about traffic.
I agree. I think people cut through Carmelita probably way more than needs to be. So that again is a Public Works, more of a neighborhood situation, and I think it's duly noted. Maybe we can get Public Works to really reach out to the neighbors around there, figure out what we can do about that.
Right.
Does traffic and circulation look at that as well?
Traffic and circulation.
Would they, is that
commission.
something we could direct them to look at? I mean, just as a tap on the shoulder to have them look at that? Is that something we can do?
In terms of if you're directing staff to ensure that Public Works, here's your comments, we can certainly give them copies of the minutes. But as a condition of approval, I would,
No,
not as a condition of approval. That's where I was,
yeah, that's correct. Yeah, I just wanted to see if we could say, hey, can you just.
Absolutely. Yeah, of course, yeah.
The last thing I wanted to bring up is that, and was talking about our block, and when I'm at the bottom of the block and I like to drive up, and we've got all our nice properties, bless you, and then you come to the end where you got these two looking townhome things. Is that going to impact my my property value at all? Here's the block that everybody loves to go on, and now everything's getting split and being made into smaller areas. It's kind of preserving just the feel of what we got already, and that's what I was bummed out about.
Yeah, it's tough, and I'll tell you why. I mean, again, getting back to David's comment there. I mean, I grew up in the area. Some of these streets, and matter of fact, Carmelita is probably one of my favorite streets in the whole city.
Will it still be with two more?
It will still be
townhouses.
And value, I don't think it's going to be bringing down values. Values are pretty strong right now, and hey, it may set a new record. You never know for that neighborhood. But I get what you're saying. It's happening, unfortunately, in multiple areas in the city. But that's the zoning guideline, and we can continue to hear. We try to make adjustments where we can.
And if these are townhomes, these are going to be the largest, I'm guessing, the largest townhomes in creation. If these if these townhomes are less than 3,000 square feet, I will eat this report.
I would love them to be less than 3,000 square feet, because they look like townhomes. So, okay, I just wanted it to be publicly heard.
So now the design review, that's next, and so. Duly noted, they look like townhomes. Maybe we can work on some finishing materials or something like that might think. Yeah, sure.
You don't have to. You can if you want, but I'm sure that these are going to be, and I'm joking, 3,000-foot craftsmen like most of the houses that we see, and they're going to be priced at $2.5 million. So, it's fine. We'll see it at design review.
Angela wants to note it that she prefers not to have a craftsman.
Yes, I'm sure she does.
No more fake craftsmen, please. Thank you.
And I'll note I haven't seen the plans or considered them in any way.
Okay, moving on. Yeah.
I asked staff a question, and I don't know whether they know it or not, but is there an existing curb that is on the corner that runs along Alameda and then turns the corner onto Carmelita?
What do you mean?
Because we're talking about, preventing potentially cars from blocking the view on Carmelita as they come down. And I just wondered if there's something there that can be painted red so that vehicles can't park and block the view of people who are turning off of Alameda or turning onto Carmelita from Alameda or turning from Carmelita onto Alameda. And if not, is there some way that we could create, and I've actually seen sort of the raised curbs, which are sort of rounded piles of tar or asphalt, and they're usually 4 to 6 inches tall, and then paint something like that red, which would allow at least a line of sight for anybody that's turning off of Alameda or turning from Carmelita onto Alameda.
I don't think staff has we're not able to tell if that's currently out there in the field based upon the plans that we have, but consistent with what Commissioner Bergman noted, we can certainly pass that on to the Public Works, and as they review the design review applications, we can certainly note the concern about that sharp corner there and look at different possibilities for ensuring that line of sight is adhered to and what other safety mechanisms might be able to be included in that area.
Right.
Any other public comment before we close the public hearing on this item?
I move we close the public hearing.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
No.
Can I
Have to have a roll call.
Commissioner Marsters?
Yes.
Commissioner Harper-Pedersen?
Yes.
Vice Chair Bergman?
Yes.
Commissioner Silberman?
Yes.
Chair Gutierrez?
Yes. So with that, does somebody want to read the motion?
I'll go ahead.
Or is there any other,
Or-
I'm sorry, discussion on this?
I feel like we've discussed it pretty thoroughly during the public comment, but does anybody else have anything to say?
Nope.
All right, then I'm ready to go ahead and make the motion. I move that the Planning Commission approve the request for tentative parcel map approval for a lot split at 1985 Carmelita Drive, APN 050-104-010, based on the findings and for the reasons incorporated in the staff report and as conditioned in the tentative parcel map certificate.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Marsters?
Yes.
Commissioner Harper-Pedersen?
Yes.
Commissioner Silberman?
Yes.
Vice Chair Bergman?
Yes.
Chair Gutierrez?
Yes. Okay. Moving along to the next item, item C, 360 Industrial Road, APN 046-054-410, 046-054-420, 046-054-440, and 046-054-450, consideration of a sign program for Orchard Supply, hardware, and adjacent future tenants. And we have a presentation from Laura.
Thank you and good evening, members of the Planning Commission. I'm Laura Russell with the Planning Division, and I'll be presenting this request for a sign program for Orchard Supply Hardware and 2 future adjacent tenants. The site is on Industrial Road, south of Taylor Way. Palo Alto Medical Foundation is across Industrial Road, and there's a residential neighborhood located to the west of the site. In June of this year, the zoning administrator and community development director approved the necessary entitlements to authorize an Orchard Supplies Hardware at 360 Industrial, and that approval includes the demolition of the building at 370 Industrial and construction of a new parking lot between the 360 and the 380 Industrial buildings. The site is currently in construction. So here is the site plan, which is also included as attachment 3, sheet 7 within the staff report. And you can see the Orchard Supply Hardware location here in the corner close to industrial. Future tenant number 1 is located across the parking lot. Future tenant number 2 is located next to Orchard. The proposed sign locations are shown here as A through F. You can also see how the buildings are oriented perpendicular to the industrial road side, so the longer sides of those buildings face inside to the parking lot. And I wanted to note also, we've received some questions related to what's been approved for the Orchard Supply Hardware project. So in light of that, I'm also going to show you those plans and the landscaping that might help answer some questions tonight in related to the signs. So I'll come back to those in a couple of minutes. So the project description tonight for the sign program includes the Orchard Supply Hardware wall signs, as shown here, and that includes 3 for Orchard. All 3 are internally illuminated channel letters in the signature corporate colors for Orchard Supply. Sign A is at the main entrance facing the parking lot. Sign B is on the same elevation, closer to Industrial Road at the entrance to the nursery, and sign C is located on the Industrial Road elevation. The sign program also includes 2 monument signs for the entire site that will help the site to work together as one coordinated commercial center. They are both internally illuminated, and they have a stone column on the side that matches the base of the Orchard building. Sign D would be located at the northern driveway, so that would serve Orchard and the adjacent tenant space. And then sign E would be located at the southern driveway. So that's where the traffic light is located, right there at the entrance to PAMF across the street. So if you're going north on Industrial, you'd be able to see this monument sign as you're coming up on the center. That would allow people to use that light in the left turn lane to enter the site into the whole kind of commercial center there. So the proposed sign program also includes a signage allocation, like an allotment for the 2 future tenants. And this is to help streamline the process and set some expectations for those tenants moving forward. So staff recommends the design of those signs be subject to a future sign permit and community development director approval. So what staff recommends is that the Planning Commission consider the maximum areas of those signs and include those in the sign program and allow the design of those to be determined as part of the sign permit process. So future tenant number 1, located at 380 Industrial, would be allowed up to 150 square feet of building signage. We would anticipate, given the way that building is laid out, that they would want signs on both the parking lot side as well as the Industrial Road side of the building. And future tenant number 2 would be allowed up to 96 square feet of building signage. And that's what the illustration here is on the screen. That's the tenant space that's directly adjacent to Orchard Supply. The municipal code allows temporary signs under certain conditions, but any banners or temporary signage have to comply with the maximum sign area for the site. And so the proposed number and size of the permanent signs are allowed to exceed the maximum with the sign program. So that's essentially what's in front of you this evening, is that allowance given the site layout and orientation to allow a higher number and size of signs that would otherwise be allowed by the code. So if we include the temporary banners now, there will be clear limits and expectations on those. And if not, then the temporary signs would not be permitted in the future because they would exceed the maximum area for signs. So the proposal that Orchard has supplied for banners is shown here. It covers both promotions and sales, like you're familiar with their no tax sale, for example, or certain holidays. And that would be the 1 banner with the maximum size, maximum 30 days per year. And then they're also proposing banners for seasonal sales, specifically for the sale of Christmas trees. And that would be reviewed by staff as part of their temporary use permit application. So prior to approval of the minor use permit, the developer undertook a lengthy public outreach process. They had 2 neighborhood meetings and made significant changes to the project in response to those comments. The building signs were shown on those plans through that public outreach process, and there were no specific comments on the signs as we worked through that application and those details. The project does have an approved photometric plan, and I can show you that in the approved plan set if you're interested. And that shows the light levels at the adjacent residential property line. So the signs would have to comply with those light levels at the property line adjacent to the houses. Staff has not received any comments directly on the signs as a result of the public notification process. So what I would like to do now is take a second and switch to the PDF of the plans that was approved by the zoning administrator and the community development director, so that I can show you where the trees are located and to give you a sense. There's a question about if there's going to be a potential for light spillover into the residential neighborhood. So let me give you some of that context. This is the site plan, and we can come back to that if it's useful, but the landscaping plan, I think, will give you the best sense of what's approved. So this is a photometric plan, which has the actual light levels that are anticipated by all of the different parking lot lights. And so when they came in the future, when they come in for the building permit application, the signs would have to comply with these light levels. In other words, not create a higher level of light than what's already approved by this. So we've carefully reviewed this and made sure that those light levels, as you get close to the residential property line, dissipate to basically 0.
Okay, so are these numbers? I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time understanding.
They are. We didn't supply this to you because we didn't anticipate this in advance.
Okay.
But this is something that was reviewed carefully by staff and is part of the approval documents.
Okay.
So these are numbers that are like, the foot candle numbers. And so so they go all the way down at the residential property line and dissipate, for example, to like 0.2. foot candle at the residential property line.
Can you do me a favor and actually increase the size of that so we can take a look at it a little closer?
Can I?
Yeah, you should be able. This is 35.5%.
So let me give you an example.
Okay, that's better.
It's a little awkward, but so you can kind of see like a little bigger here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so these levels get to about 0.1 or 0.2 at the residential property line, and so that's what we were reviewing for. So we're looking to see that the lights that they selected and the way that those lights are oriented is to light the parking lot and to light those parking spaces and basically have it dissipate almost immediately in that direction. So the lights are specifically chosen to light the parking stalls but not spill over in the residential direction.
And that was part of the building permit approval process, so that
Correct.
That's got to meet that requirement.
Yes.
Okay.
So this is the expectation in terms of what's already been approved, that the light levels not exceed this.
Am I the only one seeing the 2.0 and the 2.7 right around 5 lines down? Is that?
So this is the planning approved set. This is what I had electronically for you this evening. I made them change about 2 or 3 of these light fixtures as part of the building permit set. So a couple of these are a little bit more strict than what's shown here, actually.
Okay.
So the guiding document right now is the building permit set, which has the light levels. Because there were, as you can imagine, some conditions of approval on the planning application, and so that's where we implemented them. So then let me show you the landscaping plan. So this is what the landscaping plan looks like. And on the residential property side, there are 10 new trees, and there is a green screen wall that's proposed basically immediately on the residential property line. And the biggest constraint of the site is there's a culvert, there's a water culvert that is just a few feet away from the property line. So given that physical constraint, it's actually impossible to plant that entire thing with landscaping landscaping. So through the public outreach process, the neighbors and the developer agreed upon this scenario, which was the 8-foot tall green screen wall and then the row of trees. And the row of trees are actually planted outside of the easement area with root barriers, and they're specifically selected to get the maximum amount of canopy and fill in without damaging the culvert. And so this was the kind of a result of the lengthy process to meet the code requirements and to buffer the project as much as possible from the residential neighborhood. So this, I think, helps to put into context. There's 10 trees. Those are all 24-inch box along that residential property line. And then in the parking lot itself, the trees that are shown at the kind of, looks like the medium size here, are also 24-inch box. And only the smaller trees that are shown in the center parking lot are 15-gallon. So there's about 70 trees overall on this site, and the majority of them are a 24-inch box size. So we are optimistic that that will, provide a lot of screening between the site and the residential neighborhood. I did scale out in advance of tonight the closest sign location, which is the future tenant adjacent to Osh, is about 100 feet or just over 100 feet away from the property line. That's the closest one. And so the main Osh sign is even farther away than that. Just estimating for you this evening, I'd say it's about 150 feet away. That's my estimate. So it is a pretty good distance with a lot of screening in between. So that's what I wanted to share in light of those questions that we got previous to tonight. So the last slide on the regular PowerPoint, and you can let us know if you want to leave these plans up. But I do have the formal motion for you, and it is a little bit more detailed than the motion that I gave you in the staff report. So we would like to bring that up for you if and when you're ready to make that motion. So staff does recommend approval of the sign program as proposed this evening. The sign contractor is here. If you have specific questions regarding to the sign, I'm sure he could speak to those light levels as well, or any thoughts or concerns that you may have. So I'd be happy to answer any other questions that you may have.
I really like how this plan really tries to honor the community with the landscaping and with the signs and the lighting. It seems a lot of care has been put into making sure it integrates well.
Yeah, I don't have any specific questions. My question was how there's obviously been a lengthy process to take into consideration the lighting plan. So that was my only concern, really, actually, as it abuts the residential neighborhood. So.
My question is, so the signs on Orchard seem to be about 15 feet high from the bottom of the building to where the bottom of the signs generally are starting. I know there's many signs, so I'm just making a guess. Am I seeing that spatially appropriately?
I think it's maybe slightly higher than that, but that's approximately accurate, yeah.
Okay.
When we usually get these sign plans, don't we normally get like a chart that describes the amount of signage compared to what the zoning allows? Am I misremembering that?
There are a number of different examples. The city has not approved that many sign programs, and none since the code was adopted.
I just found it useful because it especially when a lot less signage was utilized than what the code allows. I mean, that's useful information to me. I'm assuming this is within the code, but there's references to the ordinance code, but none of the, I didn't see any of the requirements actually provided in the report, which is helpful to me. I'll just note that for future. I mean, that's just me. I like those charts.
Mm-hmm.
It helps. Yeah, it does definitely help.
Yeah, your point is well taken. We'll make sure to get more of the hard numbers in the future. So just to make sure it's 100% clear, the sign program as proposed tonight exceeds the municipal code maximum for this site. And staff
It
is...
doesn't exceed.
It does.
exceed.
Yeah.
It says it in the report. It's just not in a chart.
No, it does exceed. That's the purpose of the sign program is twofold. So the sign program is to allow a coordinated, do you know what I mean, sign program to come forward so it's functioning as one commercial center. But it also is a mechanism to allow more signage than would otherwise be allowed by the code. And staff is supportive in this case of this project because the sign code is written, it doesn't really take this type of site into consideration. So for example, the sign code is written in relationship to the frontage of the building compared to the public right-of-way. So in this particular case, because the
side
building
building.
is oriented sideways, it would be very limiting and far below what any of us, I think, would expect. So your point in terms of providing the numbers is very well taken. But I just want to be clear that the number of signs and the square footage does exceed what would otherwise be allowed by the municipal code.
By how much?
I could estimate it for you. It would take me a minute to do the math, but the allowance would only be on the side that's on the public right-of-way. So the Orchard building, for example, would be limited by the shorter side. And so that would be probably in the neighborhood of maybe just less than 100 square feet total. And tonight, the Orchard signage, for example, as proposed, hold on, I have it written down. So the total for the Orchard signs is 242 square feet. So we're looking at the angle that it's viewed at, the proportion to the building and the scale. So that's why staff was supportive of this approach.
So because there's a sign plan that also allows us to take into consideration the temporary banners as well, is that part of the whole program?
Correct.
Okay. The temporary banners or signs, where would they be, on the building itself? Or are they near the street, or where would the, I mean, if they're advertising Christmas trees, I'd imagine they would want them.
So the way that the draft certificate is worded, I tried to provide you some details in that. So the way that we have it drafted for your consideration is that in terms of the general promotional banners, only one would be allowed at any given time. There's a maximum size of 24 feet by 6 feet, and I did scale that out, and it is in proportion to the longer side of the building. Okay. It would not be allowed on the industrial road side. It would only be allowed on the internal side.
Okay, okay.
Say that again.
The temporary promotional banner would only be allowed on what I would call the south facade that faces the parking lot. It would not be allowed on the industrial road facade.
So it's item number 5C. 5B, well, I mean, it gives it the discretion of the community development director, but at the same time, it does say item C, banner shall not be allowed on the industrial road elevation of the building at any time.
Correct.
I'm sorry, I'm just struggling. I mean, I'm reviewing the report again, and I see where it says that, you know, the sign program allows deviation, and I see where staff is recommending that they allowed to deviate, but, you know, I just don't see any discussion of how it deviates and why that particular deviation is appropriate. It makes it very hard for me. This is not a criticism. I mean, or if it is, it's constructive. I'm just struggling with how I make the finding that an exception to the general rule is okay here when the report doesn't tell me what the exception is or specifically why it's necessary in this case. I mean, I get you're saying, you know, the lot is shaped in a particular way. It just, but without knowing like what's not in compliance with the code, it's just really hard to evaluate that. I'm sorry.
And through the chair, if it's helpful for the rest of the commission, we can take a 5 to 10 minute break and get the numbers for you. I mean, they're right here in the code. It's based upon the lineal frontage of each building.
And having done signs is probably one of the worst, or the weirdest calculations you guys do. So yeah, I think we could take a little break, and that would be great for definitely for the public record as well. So, okay, we'll take a 10-minute break.
Okay.
Sorry, guys.
No, that's okay. Good info.
Perfect sense.
Besides, I've already eaten dinner, so I'm fine. I got a whole day.
You're not picking on David there, are you?
I mean,
It's on that one section. I didn't bring a nuts this time.
And then we have the banners, proposed banners and seasonal sale banners separate from that. So starting first with the proposed permanent signage. So the Orchard building, because of that orientation where the shorter side is on the public right-of-way, their total allowance would be 197 square feet. And they are proposing 277 square feet of permanent signage. For tenant number 1.
And I'm sorry. So let me understand. So the reason why the calculation is 197 is based on the amount of square footage that faces the street?
Correct.
Okay. So if it was, and I'm sorry, I'm just trying to understand. So if it had more street frontage, then it could have been a larger sign?
Correct.
But the reason that it has the amount of street frontage it does, the limited amount of street frontage, was based on a negotiation with the community?
No, the building is existing.
Okay.
So it's a tenant improvement of the existing building, and the building is already oriented in that direction, where the shorter side of the building fronts onto industrial.
So what's the rationale for allowing more signage?
Because of the orientation of the building on its site, staff finds that the signage that's proposed is still in proportion and still meets the purpose and intent of the sign code. So it meets our objective related to design criteria, the quality of the design, the proportionality of the sign to the facade, as well as the purpose statement within the sign code that wants to give commercial businesses an opportunity to share their message with the public. So given the size of the parking lot and the distance and the angle that it's viewed at, and its proportionality to the facade, staff did find that this number was consistent with the purpose of the sign code. Should I continue with the more numbers?
Sure.
Okay. Tenant number 1 would be allowed 95 square feet, and as written would allow 167 square feet. And then tenant number 2, which is adjacent to the Osh site, is allowed 96 square feet, and including the monument signs would total 126 square feet. So total overall for the site of permanent building signage, the municipal code allows 388 square feet. The sign program proposes 570 square feet. That's 182 square foot difference. And then in regards to the temporary banners, the one banner that would be allowed up to 30 days per year has an area of 144 square feet. As written, the sign program allows up to 50 square feet of banners, and it can be up to 3 separate banners depending on how they arrange their seasonal sales area. So that would allow up to 194 square feet, subject to the limitations of the temporary banners.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the last number? So allowed is 144 and they've proposed 194. Did I get that right?
There's no specific code requirement for banners, so I'm just giving you what what the sign program proposes. So in working with the OSH operational people, this is what they were asking for.
Got it, okay. Thank you.
And if I remember correctly, the previous site had 3 buildings.
It did.
And it had like 2 or 3 monument signs with multiple tenants on it.
Correct. Multiple signs with multiple tenants on each of the monuments, and then most of the businesses had their own individual signs above their doors.
So it's kind of also a cleaner look. And one of the buildings was taken down for parking, so.
Correct.
Okay.
Is it useful to see the elevations with the signs for the sense of proportion of the elevations?
Before you leave this, can I ask one real quick question about the landscaping? The fences that border the backyards of these homes, those still remain while the green screen is being planted and put in place?
That's correct. So they've identified and staked the property line, and the residential fences along that line vary. Some of them are set back from the property line. A couple of them actually encroach over the property line. So they've designed the green screen to take all that into consideration and not require removal of any of those private property fences. There is an existing cyclone fence, which is totally on the site, which will be removed in order to install the green screen.
Perfect, thank you.
So are there criteria that we're supposed to apply in determining when someone can exceed what the amount of signage that's normally allowed?
Yes.
What are those criteria?
Let me get the elevations, and then I can point you to the findings.
And if you're just going to point me to the findings 1, 2, 3, and 4, I see those, but I'm wondering if there are specific criteria that we're supposed to apply when approving more signage than what's allowed normally.
There's not separate criteria specific for this purpose within the code. I'm sorry, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I'm sorry, and maybe it's just me, and it's fine. I'm just struggling. It's like, and I look at this as like a puzzle. Like, I'm trying to figure out what I need to find in order to do something, and normally when we want to do something other than what the code allows, we need to make a finding that something. Otherwise, it feels kind of arbitrary. You know, the staff says, well, they look good to, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to be, I'm being colloquial because I'm always colloquial, but hey, it looks good to us. You know, nobody's complaining, so go ahead and approve it. And that just, to me, it just feels somewhat arbitrary.
Okay, so there's some additional criteria that might help you in making that determination. So I don't know if we can pull it up, Lisa, but it's these, there's more criteria here. 1822. 02H. So there's criteria that's found within the sign code that's not, it's not just in the finding section. There's kind of some more discussion about what can be evaluated. So on page 2 of the staff report, I gave those reference numbers, and I kind of summarized the types of things that we would be reviewing when the individual sign permit came to us. But if you're asking what is staff using to evaluate our recommendation, these are the types of criteria that we're using. So we're looking for form, proportion, scale, the relationship to other nearby signs, the construction materials, and compatibility with its environment with respect to use, forms, materials, setbacks, location, height, and design. So I'm reading that from my staff report. So what I do is I read that section of the code and analyze the project, and then I would normally kind of summarize the main things that, you know, we're reviewing for. So those are the main types of categories that we review for when an application like this comes to us.
So what makes it a candidate? I mean, what provision in the code makes it a candidate for a sign program to begin with? I mean, what says, otherwise we could say anything can be a sign program, and
like what triggers?
Yeah, what triggers it to be considered separately as a sign program?
Because of the multi-tenant aspect to the project, yeah.
Thank you.
So we're looking, so it does comply with the setback requirements. You know, it initially proposed taller monument signs. They reduced that. It's beneath the code maximum for monument signs. So in terms of the number of signs and the amount of square footage, we're really looking at that criteria related to form, proportion, and scale. And again, the relationship to other nearby signs, because there's, you know, the mix is kind of, you know, there's a mix of signs out there. There are some that are quite a bit larger. So there is more discretion in this type of application than for some of the things that come before you.
Right. Yeah, so what I understand you to say is that because it's a multi-tenant environment, that allows us to create a sign program, which there seems to be a lot more latitude than normally is for other signage for a single tenant.
Correct.
Okay, great.
Correct. So part of, for example, part of staff's analysis as I reviewed the master sign program for Best Buy and Home Goods and that shopping center, they received a variance. There wasn't another mechanism for the signs in the previous version of the code. And just off the top of my head, that Best Buy sign, for example, is about 4 to 5 times bigger than would have otherwise been approved by the code. And I'm not necessarily holding out that as an example of what we would approve today, but rather as an example of how a sign program can be used to meet the unique characteristics of the site. So in that particular case, freeway visibility, we can understand, was part of their consideration. In this particular site, the orientation of the building in relationship to the street is part of the consideration, the unique characteristics of this site.
I personally, I think it's well constructed along with the landscaping plan in the context of a sign program, which is in the context of a multi-tenant arrangement. I don't think that anything is gregariously out there shadowing over the community. I personally think it's thoughtfully done.
Scott?
This is where we should be.
Angela and I have been trying to find the things to help David, but the one thing that I would like to have a discussion about is, in particular, the signs that have the potential to be visible from the neighborhood. And I know there was a huge uproar over the In-N-Out Burger sign, and I'm wondering if we can put as a condition here that the signs, at least the ones that have the potential to be seen by the neighborhood, are turned off 1 hour after business is done. So I'm not talking about the one that's on Industrial Road that everybody could see, or you could see from the freeway or from the road, but the ones that are sort of internal there, that have the ability to be seen. I wondered if there's any way we could sort of say those need to be turned off or turned on, can be turned on 1 hour before business starts and are turned off 1 hour after business, so that we don't have the problem of people waking up at 2 in the morning and going, I wake up and see this sign every day, you know, and I don't know if that's something that people would be comfortable with.
I mean,
The question is, can we do it? I think we can. I think it's more of the comfort. And
I literally, when I was reviewing this, the only thing I'd even had notes on was spill over to the neighborhood and how to avoid In-N-Out. Was almost the only thing in my mind. It hadn't occurred to me, even though I read that it had exceeded the signage coverage, it hadn't occurred to me that that was really the problem. It was definitely more whether we'd see another In-N-Out. So I would be in favor of saying, it looks like sign F, A, and B would be the biggest concerns of spillover to the neighborhood, unless somebody else sees something I don't.
The light, well, maybe I'm wrong and maybe I misunderstand, but I thought that the first diagram she brought up that had the illumination showed that the signs wouldn't be blaring out into the community. Did I not
Well, they don't
understand
think
that?
they will, given the landscape coverage and given the light spillover numbers.
Right.
I think what Scott means is that if we find that that's not actually happening, that putting hours on.
I'm not opposed to that.
Well, there's two different things, right? One is, does the light actually shine and illuminate other property? And the other is, can you see it from your window? And I mean, I'm sure there are many, 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 many houses on the east side that aren't illuminated by the In-N-Out sign, but they sure as heck can see it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that the lighting probably didn't take into consideration the signage, because I'm not sure. I think that lighting study really looked at the parking lot lights.
But my understanding is that they still would have to comply, even with in addition with the signage, it has to be under that threshold with
Yes.
any lighting, really.
And the lights are already going to be on in the parking lot anyway, just for safety. I mean, they have to be. And I think the neighborhood, when I went to that meeting, actually wanted them to be on because they didn't want a dark parking lot for things to occur in at night.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be opposed to adding that as a condition. I don't know how everybody else feels about
I'd be
that.
absolutely fine with adding that as a condition, Scott.
Okay.
Through the chair, if I may, I think it would be useful for implementation for you to add the condition explicitly that the signs, with the building permit application for the signs, that they need to update the photometric plan and show that, then we'll all have it for the records. I don't think it will affect it, but I think it is useful to have, given the concerns that you've expressed. And then I also wanted to share with you the approved hours of operation for the Orchard business are Monday through Saturday from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. and Sunday from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. If that has any bearing on your thoughts about when the sign should turn off.
Say the Sunday hours again.
Sunday till 8 p.m., 8 to 8 on Sunday.
Well, I wouldn't want to actually tie it to actual hours in case their business hours change, right? I'd want to say I would like to tie it to like an hour after.
Or
an hour
after,
before,
or 1
yeah.
hour before, so that, you know, if it's dark in the morning,
Yeah.
that the sign comes on an hour early. I agree.
I feel like we're coming close to.
I think we're there, unless there's anything else.
I want to make sure David is comfortable.
You know, honestly, I'm going to vote against it just because I guess I just don't understand well enough what I need to decide in order to do it. But normally I wouldn't vote against it. I would just want it to come back for a better explanation of what I'm supposed to be deciding. But I am totally fine with you for voting in favor, and my no is not based on my belief that this is necessarily bad. I think it's probably good. It just, I don't understand well enough. I just want to do something that to me feels a little arbitrary.
Fair enough.
But I totally respect folks being able to vote, because I don't really have any specific concerns other than my lack of understanding.
Fair enough.
Yep.
With that,
Okay.
are we done with discussion?
I'm done with discussion. Just want to make sure that we codify the updating of the photometric plan and the hour before and after into the motion.
Yeah, we'd like
So I'll let Scott do that. And I'll second
okay.
like a good girl.
Okay.
Yeah, I would actually recommend maybe that you consider language of the signs that are internal to the parking lot. That way it would also address the signs for future tenant number 1.
Okay.
And also, if you're going to put a condition on the before and after hours of operation, you would want to extend that to both future tenants as well. So all 3 business operations.
Who wants to do this creative motion here? Or the addition of the items?
I can try.
Go for it.
I move that the...
I'm sorry, through the chair, I don't know that we opened the public hearing.
Oh, you're absolutely right. Is there anybody else that'd like to speak on this item? You're on camera here.
You're here, right? Yeah.
Good call.
Everyone left the building. So yeah. Got me a little scared. My name's David Asajan. I'm the applicant with Ad Art Sign Company. Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners, and staff. I just really wanted to, I've heard all the comments, all good points all the way around. I just wanted to thank staff. We're on probably revision number 10. They've definitely done their due diligence. Laura, you know, very communicative. Appreciate the back and forth. In your absence, Lisa was involved as well. As many of you know, Orchard was founded and started in San Jose. They're local. They really did go out of their way to work with the community. They're actively involved. I think the architecture speaks to it. And again, just wanted to say, you know, thank you for the professionalism. It's been almost a year going on this point, so we're obviously excited. I know Orchard is, and I'm sure the community will be once it's open. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So can I get a motion to close the public hearing?
I move that we close the public hearing.
Second. Scott, you
Sorry,
seconded?
which commissioner seconded?
Scott did. Can I get a roll
Commissioner
call?
Marsters?
Yes.
Commissioner Harper Pedersen?
Yes.
Commissioner Silverman?
Yes.
Vice Chair Bergman?
Yes.
Chair Gutierrez?
Yes. So moving along, formal motion. Who wants to make it?
Okay. I move that the Planning Commission grant approval of the request for a sign program for Orchard Supply Hardware at 360 Industrial Road and 2 adjacent future tenants, APNs 046-054-410, 046-054-420, 046-054-440, and 046-054-450, based on the findings and for the reasons incorporated in the staff report and as conditioned in the code compliance certificate, with the following 2 conditions added. 1, that all illuminated signs internal to the parking lot shall only be lit during business hours and up to 1 hour before and after business hours. And the second condition is that a updated photometric study is completed to the satisfaction of the planning staff.
Second.
Can I have a roll call? Oh.
And I wanted to make sure that this covers all future tenants.
With that friendly amendment, do you
Friendly
second
amendment.
that?
Second.
Can I have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Marsters?
Yes.
Commissioner Harper Pedersen?
Yes.
Commissioner Silverman?
No.
Vice Chair Bergman?
Yes.
Chair Gutierrez?
Yes. Thank you. Okay, moving along, reports, correspondence, and general information. Report on recent city council actions.
Staff has no updates for this evening.
Planning Commission comments or reports.
I will not be here on the 7th. Family surgery.
Oh.
Are we still trying to get a December 21st call, roll call on that one too?
I have an update on that. Are we on to item D now? I just wanted to be sure there was no further Planning Commission comments or reports. So moving on, an update for the Commission concerning the remaining hearings we have scheduled for this calendar year. Our next meeting occurs on Monday, December the 7th. And consistent with the City Council practice of canceling the last meeting of the month, we will also be canceling the Planning Commission hearing of December 21st. So we have one public hearing meeting available for December. I would also like to update the Planning Commission that the recently approved project, approved on November 2nd, for 545 Walnut, did receive an appeal last Thursday. So that will go forward to the City Council for their review.
Is there a date on that yet?
Pardon?
Is there a date for that to be heard by the City Council?
We are going to be confirming that very shortly, and we can certainly, pass that information on to the Commission.
Thank you.
Is there any questions?
An appeal by somebody outside the project or the project itself?
That was an appeal filed by Vanessa Navala, one of the residents at 551 Walnut, and I believe she spoke on November the 2nd. And then lastly, for our next meeting on December 7th, in terms of items that will be presented to the Commission, we have the Transit Village Grading and Dirt Hall Certificate and Residential Sign Program that was actually scheduled for tonight, but we continued that to the 7th. And potentially, we will be presenting the proposed subdivision and single-family residential application for 2811 San Carlos Avenue on December 7th. Potentially, it looks like it may be ready to go, but that may be one of the other projects we can present to the Commission. 2811 San Carlos Avenue.
Okay.
Potentially.
All right.
And that's all I have for this evening.
Great. With that, meeting adjourned.